On March the 10th, 2024, Kensington Palace had exactly one job: release a single photograph, calm the internet down, end 3 months of feverish speculation with one warm, ordinary family picture. A mother and her 3 children, smiling, everything fine. They had the whole machine behind them, centuries of experience managing public perception, the most media-savvy institution on the planet. One photo, that's all it had to do. Within hours, 5 of the biggest news agencies on Earth did something they normally reserve for propaganda out of dictatorships. They issued a kill notice. Recall the image. Do not use it. Manipulated at source. Reuters, the Associated Press, AFP, Getty, others, one after another, pulled the picture back off the wire. Sit with how strange that is. The photograph the palace sent out to prove that everything was fine became the first royal image in modern history to be officially branded as manipulated. Not by trolls, not by anonymous accounts on the internet, but by the free press itself. The people whose entire profession is deciding what's real looked at an official royal handout and said, "We can't vouch for this." Now, before I go 1 inch further, let me be completely clear about what this story is and what it absolutely is not. Catherine's illness was real, her cancer was real, it was serious, and the way she has carried herself through it has been quietly, genuinely brave. That is off the table. This channel does not speculate about a woman's health, and we're not going to start now. Not today, not ever. This is not a story about where she was or what was wrong with her. This is a story about an institution, about how the palace, trying to end a rumour, manufactured the one thing it could never afford to hand its critics: hard, certified, agency-stamped proof that a royal image could not be trusted. Trust is the only product the monarchy actually sells, and on March the 10th, they broke it themselves. And here's the detail almost nobody clocked at the time. There is one version of that photograph, the untouched original, the file straight off the camera, that the palace could release tomorrow morning and end this entire argument in a single click. They never have. Not in 2024, not since. Hold on to that, because by the end, I want you to really ask yourself why. So let's start with the apology, because the apology is where the trap snaps shut. The day after the kill notices, a statement went out under Catherine's name, and it read like this: "Like many amateur photographers, I do occasionally experiment with editing. I wanted to express my apologies for any confusion the family photograph we shared yesterday caused." Read that back slowly. Like many amateur photographers, I occasionally experiment with editing. Now, think about the corner the palace had painted itself into. For 3 solid months, their entire answer to the wild speculation had been one thing, repeated in different words: trust us. Trust the official statement. Trust the palace line. Don't listen to the internet. Listen to us. We are the reliable source. And then their official product, the actual photograph, turned out to be edited. So what was the fix? What was the remedy for an edited official image? Another official statement. Trust our explanation about why you can't trust the image. The exact tool they were using to kill the doubt was the tool that had just failed in public. They tried to put out a fire with the thing that was on fire. And that is the moment this stopped being a story about a photo and became a story about credibility. Because here's the genuinely uncomfortable part, and I want you to actually pick a side in your head as I lay it out. There are 2 doors out of this room, only 2, and I want you to choose one, because your answer says everything about how much benefit of the doubt this institution has earned. Door number 1, it was exactly what they said. An innocent mistake. A recovering mother did a bit of clumsy Photoshop on a family snap, tidied up a sleeve, cleaned up a face, the way millions of people do before they post a picture. No sinister motive at all. Fine. But follow that all the way through. If that's true, then it means the palace machine, the press office, the aides, the communications team, the most experienced media operation in the world, let a visibly, provably manipulated image go out to every wire agency on Earth with, apparently, nobody checking it first. On the single most scrutinized photograph of the year. That's not a scandal of intent. That's institutional incompetence at a historic level.
Door number 2. The editing was covering something. Maybe it was stitched together from more than one shot. Maybe it was an older picture. Maybe pieces of different frames were combined because there wasn't one clean image to send. We don't know, and I'm not going to pretend we do. But if that's the case, then a manufactured image was knowingly pushed out to the public as a candid family moment, and that is worse. So there's your choice: incompetent or concealing. Those are the doors. There is no third one where the palace looks good, because in every version, a fake photograph went out under the royal name and got caught. The agencies looked at the same 2 doors you're looking at right now, and they chose. Because a kill notice isn't a shrug. A kill notice is a professional organization staking its reputation on the statement, "This is not to be trusted." Tell me in the comments, incompetent or concealing, which door do you walk through? I read these and I already know this one's going to split the room. Now let's pull back, because if you think this was about one photo, you're thinking too small. What was actually on the line here was the entire system. Understand what a royal photograph is. It's not decoration, it's currency. The handout image, the birthday portrait, the holiday snap, the christening photo, that is quite literally how the modern monarchy pays the public. They don't give many interviews, they don't answer many questions. What they give you instead is the image, a curated, official, trustworthy picture that says, "Here we are, all is well, the family endures." You accept the picture in exchange for your belief. That's the deal. That's the whole transaction. And the second that photograph carries an agency kill notice, the currency stops being worth its face value. Because look what happened next. Getty and other agencies didn't stop at the one image. They went back and started reviewing past royal handout photos, older ones everybody had accepted for years without a second thought, and they found more. Other official royal pictures got flagged for signs of digital editing. One photo becoming a question is embarrassing. Every previous photo becoming a question is something else entirely. Because now every future royal image comes with an invisible asterisk. Every portrait from here on gets zoomed in on, pixel peeped, run through analysis tools by strangers online before the ink is even dry. For an institution whose only real asset, the only thing it actually has to sell, is being believed, that is not a bad afternoon in the press office. That is a devaluation of the entire currency. They didn't lose a photo, they lost the presumption of good faith on every photo that comes after it. Alright, this is the moment I promised you at the very start. Let's open it up. Remember the vault? The untouched original file. Before we get to it, let's actually walk through what the analysts saw, because this wasn't vague, this was specific. Zoom into that photograph and the problems stack up fast. Charlotte's sleeve, the cuff of her cardigan, simply doesn't line up. The edge misaligned where no natural fold would put it. The hand that seems to blur into nothing. A zip that runs crooked and then stops. Strands of hair that end too cleanly, cut off against the background in a way real hair doesn't. A tile in the background that bends. Little seams all over the frame. The fingerprints of an image that has been cut and stitched and pushed together from more than one source. Any one of those, on its own, sure, a compression glitch, a trick of the light, you could wave it away. But all of them, together, in the same frame? That's why the forensic people didn't hesitate. That's why the agencies moved within hours. This wasn't a filter, this was surgery. And now, here's the knockout. Here's the thing that turns this from a mistake into a decision. The original, untouched photograph, the raw file, straight off the camera before anyone opened an editing program, has never been released. Not once. Think about the position they were in. Rumors screaming across the internet for months. Their own picture just torn off the wires by 5 agencies. Their credibility bleeding out in real time. And sitting right there, the single object that would have ended all of it instantly. The clean original. One file, one click, rumor over.
They released the apology instead. Let that land. They had the receipt that would have proved them innocent, and they chose to publish a statement about experimenting with editing rather than the picture itself. Think about the sheer imbalance of that decision. One option, release the clean original, costs nothing, ends everything, and clears the family completely. The other option, say nothing about the file, apologize for editing, leaves the doubt alive, and hands the internet 3 more months of fuel. They looked at those 2 options and picked the second one. That is not the choice of an institution that has a clean original sitting ready to go. Now here's the rule you already know in your gut, whether you've ever said it out loud or not. Institutions release the original when the original helps them. When a company has the security footage that clears it, the footage comes out in about an hour. When it doesn't come out, you already know what that silence tends to mean. The palace had, in theory, the one thing that would have won the argument outright, and they kept it in a drawer. You're allowed to wonder why. Quick thing, because if this is the kind of royal story you actually want, told straight, with the receipts, no fairy tales, no health gossip nonsense, do me a favour and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel more than you'd think. That's the only time I'll ask. Now, back to it, because we are nowhere near done. Here's the thing. That photo wasn't a one-off stumble. It was a 40-year reflex finally caught on camera. Because the palace has a pattern, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. When in doubt, black out. Go quiet. Say the absolute minimum, and only when you're cornered. word. You've watched it your whole life. The Diana years, and the wall of silence that met a marriage falling apart in public. Recollections may vary. 3 words deployed as an entire answer to serious, specific allegations, because a non-answer is always preferred to an answer. The internal report into bullying claims around Meghan, commissioned with great seriousness, completed, and then quietly buried. The findings never published. And yes, the long information vacuum before Catherine's own announcement. Months where the palace said almost nothing and simply let the silence sit there and rot, filling with exactly the kind of speculation that silence always breeds. That's the reflex. Silence first, minimum disclosure second, honesty only when there's no other exit left. And it has worked for them for decades, because for decades there was no one standing on the other side with the tools to check. The photo scandal is simply the first time that ancient reflex ran headfirst into a world where 5,000 strangers can forensically analyse your image before lunch. The habit didn't change, the world did, and the habit finally misfired in public. Now, I want to be very careful and very fair here, and I'm going to say this part out loud so there's no mistaking it. There was a human being at the centre of this who did nothing wrong. Catherine was recovering from a serious illness. Whatever happened with that photograph, the idea of a woman in that situation being handed the blame for an institutional failure, that should sit badly with you. It sits badly with me, because look at whose name was on that apology. Not the press office, not a communications director, not the palace machine that actually sends images to global wire agencies. Hers. The amateur photographer framing did one very specific job. It took a systemic failure, a breakdown of the professional process that's supposed to vet every official image, and it placed the whole weight of it on the shoulders of one recovering woman. A sweet, relatable, oops, I edited my family photo story. Individual mistake. Nothing to see at the institutional level. Move along. And the public felt exactly who was being protected in that arrangement. It wasn't her. She was the shield. The system was what stood behind her. That's the failed appeal. Not hers, theirs. And people saw straight through it. Which brings us to the heart of the whole thing. The part I think history will actually remember. And I'm going to say it flat, because it deserves to be said flat.
For 2 solid years before this, the palace and its allies had positioned themselves as the grown-ups in the room on the subject of misinformation. Harry's distorted narratives, the dangers of social media speculation, the recklessness of people online who spread things that aren't true. Trust the institution, not the noise. That was the posture. We are the reliable ones. They are the rumour mill. And then the only proven, agency-certified, officially flagged piece of manipulated royal media of that entire era came from inside Kensington Palace. Not from a tabloid, not from a troll farm, not from the internet they kept warning you about. From them. The fact-checkers got fact-checked. The people lecturing the world about what's real put out the one image the professionals ruled was not. And you cannot spend 2 years as the arbiter of truth and then hand the internet a certified fake with your own name on it. That's not a slip. That's the whole argument collapsing in a single afternoon. So who stood up and defended how the palace handled it? Let's walk the room and count, because that number tells you everything. The agencies? No. They're the ones who pulled the picture. The royal press pack? The accredited correspondents who cover this family for a living? No. They publicly complained they'd been misled, that they'd passed on a photo in good faith that turned out to be manipulated. Palace insiders? They were briefing anonymously against each other, one camp quietly pointing at the other over whose mistake it actually was, which tells you there was no united front to even mount a defence. And the monarchist commentators, the friendly voices, the people whose whole brand is defending the crown, their kindest verdict was amateur hour, a shambles, an embarrassment. Think about where that leaves them, when the best defence your own side can muster is, look, it was incompetence, not a conspiracy. When incompetence is the generous reading your friends are reaching for, you have already lost the argument. There was nobody in the room whose job it is to say, the palace handled this well. Not one voice. On the handling, not the illness, the handling, the palace stood completely alone. And here's the part they can never take back. The kill notices are permanent. They don't expire. They sit in the archives of Reuters, the AP, Getty, AFP, the historical record of global journalism, attached forever to the royal name. Anyone, anytime, for as long as those archives exist, can pull them up
and read the same 3 words: manipulated at source. That photograph will be a footnote in the story of this family for 100 years, and there is no statement, no apology, no passage of time that unsends it. But here's the core of it, the unsolved thing, the one that genuinely stays with me. That original file still exists. It's real. It is sitting on a memory card or a hard drive in Windsor right now as you listen to this. The single object that would end the entire argument, that would let the palace walk out and say, look, here it is, the real thing. We told you the truth, is within arm's reach and always has been. Releasing it would cost nothing, and they never have. So ask yourself the only question that actually matters here. Forget the sleeve, forget the zipper, forget every pixel. Just this. What does an institution gain by refusing to prove itself innocent when the proof is right there in the drawer? What does the silence buy that the truth wouldn't? I've got my suspicions, but I want yours. Tell me your theory in the comments. Why does that original never come out? I read them, and on this one, I really want to know what you think. And if this is the story that pulled you in, the palace and the silence, the 97 days before Catherine's announcement, where an entire institution simply went dark and let the world guess, that's a whole story on its own. What actually happened inside that vacuum, and why the palace let it run as long as it did, that one's waiting for you right here. I'll see you in it.